You know, I talk to a lot of people who are vinyl collectors, and one thing they tell me that I like the most is when the needle touches the record. You hear that little bit of pop.
I think when I was 2 years old, I would just stand by the console and watch the record spin.
I like interacting with the record player and like having to actually flip everything over and pay attention to the music.
There's something about holding a record this big that just makes it exciting, because what amazed me was that this is a piece of vinyl in here, and that music can come out of this. It's just fabulous.
Well, let's start with the wax cylinder, right? The crudest one. You speak into a huge horn, and that funneled all those vibrations down to a little membrane that had a little needle on it, and it just wiggled a line on something soft. And then all you had to do was repeat the process in reverse, and it came out the horn. That process is exactly the same with LP today, in essence. And it's really quite an amazing thing that simple process gives us such extraordinary sound sometimes.
These are my friends. They're called Gunk, from Philadelphia, but from here, sort of, originally. I'm Chris. I run Square of Opposition Records. I started it in the spring of 2001. This is the new record by my friend John. He's from here still. He lived in Caddy. If you ask 10 people why vinyl, you'll probably get 10 different answers. There are people that will swing on the audiophile side of things. They'll say it sounds warmer, they'll say it sounds truer to, you know, the natural recording or whatever, and that's true, sure. You probably don't have a record player that matters. I probably don't have a record player that matters. You have people, I don't know, that want to be cool and want to do it because it's obscure or whatever. I don't know. I definitely feel more proud of a record. I think that it takes a lot more to make a record. Record pressing is a few different steps. There's the master, which gets cut onto a lacquer. The lacquer then gets sent to a plating plant where they plate and they make the stampers. The stamper then gets sent to a pressing plant where they press the actual records, and then the records come back to me. I've pretty much exclusively used Music Hall for the past like 8 or 9 years, and part of that I really like about them is that every record is literally handmade. There's a guy standing in front of this press. He puts the patty in, he puts a label on the B side, a label on the A side, and pushes the button. It smashes it in the press, and then the press opens, he takes that record, he puts it on the trimmer, and he trims it. Puts it in a paper sleeve, puts it on the table behind him, moves on to the next record. Every single record is different. You buy a CD, and it's one of 1,000, or one of 10,000, or one of 1,000,000. All million look the exact same. It's a mathematical equation that the answer is the same to every time. I think that's part of the appeal as well, is just like the personality. And that's probably why I don't like MP3s. Probably why I was glad when, you know, vinyl came back and CDs sort of went away, is they don't have that personality.
Probably started with like, you know, Supertramp and like Rush and like everything I listened to as a kid with my dad.
So my mom raised me on the Beatles, Styx, The Who, the Guess Who, and my dad was raising me on the newer stuff, Alice in Chains, Nirvana. He was the one that introduced me to Bob Marley.
My dad was a vinyl collector, probably had like 500-600 LPs down the basement, so he had Pink Floyd, Zeppelin, Zappa, Residents, weird stuff like that. So I started listening to that at an early age.
My favorite is the Beatles, and I like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath.
I like to think of listening to music as my own personal experience at home. This band's playing for me.
Good sound is about creating and conveying the emotion of the artist, hearing the separation of instruments. I think ultimately there is a perfection out there of sound, and analog is approaching it from one side, and digital is approaching it from another side.
I refuse to compress the crap out of my music. It needs to sound decent. I downloaded Arcade Fire's Funeral when it first came out, and I downloaded it at like 64K, like the lowest you possibly could. And when I first listened to it, I thought it was the worst music I've ever listened to, ever. I decided to re-download it, and I got it at a higher bitrate, 128K, which isn't much better, but it did the job. I thoroughly enjoyed that album.
The quality of that music when it's converted into digital depends on how many bits per second you're using. How much information is there. Most of these things, MP3 that you know of, or anything that's used with streaming, are using a form of lossy compression, where they're literally throwing certain amounts of information away from the music. So a whole bunch of smart engineers got together and said, let's get rid of the things that we think are not as important as other things. So you can still hear the beat and you can still understand what they're saying and it doesn't sound distorted, but the air behind the music, the emotion behind the person's voice, all those are the things that a lossy compression algorithm will throw away.
Our collection's gigantic. It's kind of obnoxious, but we have everything from old jazz record to like classic rock. At the Gates or like Converge and like heavier stuff too. So it's really all over the place.
One of the main reasons why I come to the store here, it's actually twofold. One of it is if there's a new release, I'm interested in getting in vinyl, but probably more importantly, filling the gap of music that I don't have at home. It makes you feel like a completist as a collector.
I said to Brad, the first thing I said was, you know what, until you open the store, I thought I could never buy an album again. And so you opened a whole new world for me. I said, now I can come back and start over and build my collection, which I did, and I'm still doing.
My band had played in Pennsylvania a few times, in Philly and Wilkes-Barre, and we would go out of our way when going to Philly, which is probably like an extra hour-and-a-half drive. We'd drive out to here first, look through all the records, and then drive to Philly later that night and play the show.
I started coming to play again probably like 6 years ago. I moved to Southside about then and just like exploring the town, found it. Over the years, I've gotten to know like the people who work here well, so it's always a comfortable place to come.
I started talking to Mary Beth and Mary at the Compact Disc Center and realized that we all have similar musical tastes, and we kind of grew from there.
Let me tell you something. Mary and I are friends. And what better way to have a consumer business relationship than dealing with friends?
I shop here because it's become more like a family to me than just a record store. I enjoy coming down here, and that's why I do it.
This is the 50-cent room at Double Decker. It's actually bigger than some stores. Basically anything that's a little off condition, old 45s, just in general worn albums that Jamie doesn't feel that meet the quality that he wants to have in the store, all come back here. This Ramones record, scratch here. I mean, I'm sure someone would probably put $8 to $10 on that somewhere else.
With new stuff, I just grab whatever because that'll be fine. Especially with old stuff, the pricing usually depends on the condition of the record. You know, you're not going to pay $48 for something that's going to be useless when you go home and play it.
What I do is I just take it and I let it come out my hand like this. With my fingers in the center of my palm resting it. I hold it up to the light and I'll look for scratches or any marks that might make the difference in playing. Then what I do is I'll flip it over. I never touch the record. I keep my hands away from that.
You can see there's no gouge marks, no scratch marks. It has a nice reflective surface to the light, so you know it's rather clean. If a record is well worn, you'll actually see the reflection dull. Where else is there a better way to preview an album for $3? And if it's a great sounding album and it looks good, for $3 you can't go wrong.
The most fun you can have is going through a bin and being reminded of something. Be reminded that something existed that you didn't remember or didn't know about. That's what I'm digging for, is that glimpse of nostalgia, that memory.